What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of epic conversations. And I'm the host of Epic Conversations. As always, you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, a solution for someone's problem. And the 2018 award winner, Innovation Award winner by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association in the area of innovation. So they say I'm a creative, I'm a creative.
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah. We're back with one of our friends. Her name is Serena Wills, a frequent flyer of the Dr. Vibe program.
Need some mileage.
She's done some miles on the platform. A good way of putting it. A little bit about Serena. She's a native New Yorker and currently resides in D.C., Washington, D.C., aka Chocolate City. She holds a BA in Policy Studies from the CUSE, otherwise known as Syracuse University, and an MPA from Virginia Tech. And it says studying, but she already has her MA now, I think, in health and wellness coaching. And I told her the last time that she was on, she needed to get me an updated bio. She hasn't done it yet.
I am so sorry. I know.
Right. Relax. She's a nonprofit guru, a published author, and spoken word artist. Her previous publications include her first poetry book titled Reconstruction, Pieces of Life, Volume 1, and was released in 2014 and is available on her website, Amazon, and Barnes & Noble. She's also published numerous anthologies and a contributing writer to health and wellness bloggers for online magazines. She's a mother of a beautiful son who we saw a little bit earlier, who's the boss of the house, and an advocate for ovarian cancer, GYN cancers, HIV, AIDS, lymphoma, and the subject we're going to be chatting about tonight, Lyme disease research. And is a member of the and of course, she's a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Yes.
Welcome back, Miss Serena Wills. How are you, Miss Serena Wills?
I am blessed. Thank you so much for having me. And sorry for the delay, everyone. Technical difficulties.
No worries. It's all good. It's all good. Well, let's get it. What's been going on since you last been on? A few weeks ago it was sorority talk. What's been happening since?
Yeah, I know, right? People are asking when's part 2, and other sororities and fraternities are like, when is it our turn? When can we get on? So
are you kidding me? Are you serious?
No, I'm gonna have to connect you with the other sororities and fraternities, and
let's make that happen. Yeah, please, let's make that happen.
That would be great. I wish there were like 9 slots in this Get Vocal platform, so you could have all 9, Divine 9 from
of course, Divine 9. But let me. You know what? I'm working on something that may be able to make that happen.
Yeah, that would be great. Then we have a representative from each sorority and fraternity, which would be great.
That would be outstanding. Absolutely. And Shannon has jumped on.
Hi, Shannon.
That was an accident. That was an accident. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay. It's all right. All right, no problem. We're having fun here. We're family here. And greetings to Mr. Kinte. Greetings to Shannon, who you just saw. Greetings to Lokesh from the Get Vocal team. Greetings to Tony and greetings to Luke. I really want to follow up with you in regards to the sorority thing, big time.
Yeah.
All right. So let me ask, Lyme disease. You know what? Let's go from the bottom and rise up. What is Lyme disease?
Yeah, it's always good to have a starting point. So
yes,
Lyme disease was originally founded 60s, 70s, a few miles outside of a town called Lyme, Connecticut. So that's where it got its name from, Lyme. So it's not called Limes with an S, it's Lyme. Lyme sounds bad enough. We don't need to add an S. Okay, so it was discovered, 40 some odd years ago by infected ticks. So you hear about ticks that are on dogs and deer. They look like spiders, but they are shaped a little bit differently. Some of them are so microscopic, sometimes you don't know if they're on your skin. And there's controversy about where these infected ticks came from. There was a laboratory in Connecticut that was doing experiments, as they call it. And there's actually an author, Kristen Newby, who I just met the other day, who wrote a book called Bitten. And she talks a lot about ticks and, you know, all the theories that they came from infected ticks from Connecticut due to experiments. And people were saying that these experiments were due to bio warfare, chemical warfare, things of that nature, and the ticks got out. So that's the theory of where these ticks came from. So fast forward, these ticks carry a bacteria called short-term Borrelia. And if a tick gets on you that is carrying this bacteria and also its other friends, which are called co-infections, and it bites you like one bit me, you can then become infected with Lyme disease. So it comes from, you know, ticks getting on you. You know, they don't fly. So, you know, if you're rubbing up against a bush or you're taking a nature walk, or if they're in a tree and they fall out the tree, they get on you, and if they bite you, you can be infected. So that's how Lyme disease starts, is from the infected tick and biting you. And sometimes it could show a mark, which looks like a bullseye a rash. And in my case, it did not show a mark. It just showed like a regular bite, as if I got bitten by a mosquito. So I didn't have the bullseye.
So, well, thank you for sharing some of the background of this, of Lyme disease. Now, how did you discover, because you just mentioned, you know, how did you discover? You thought it was a mosquito bite, or?
Well, I remember there being a bug on me. So let's just rewind back to September 2012. Give everybody a little more background. My son was only 13 months old when I got bitten. So I had almost toddler. I'm a single mom on top of this. So I was taking a walk with former coworkers. And usually I take my walks, and I used to run. I actually used to run marathons before I got bitten by a tick, and my life crumbled after that. But I took a walk with my coworkers, and I usually like taking the paved trail because I like to see where I'm going. I like to be away from bushes and trees. I like to see nature. I like to see trees. I don't want to rub up against it. So that particular day, it was mid-September. It was a hot day. They said, no, let's take a nature walk off the trail. And I tell people there's this little voice inside of you called your intuition. And sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's loud. This, you know, is pretty much loudly saying, take the paved trail, do what you know best. But I wanted to go with my coworkers because I was kind of new to the job. I was getting to know them, so I wanted to walk with them. Well, there was about a group of 10 of us. I was the only one that got bitten out of the whole group. And I remember brushing up against it was a bush. It was kind of hanging out. And I remember this bug on me. I couldn't quite get it off. And I finally took it off my arm, and the bite mark, it looked like just a tiny little mosquito bite. So, you know, probably just got bitten by a bug and I'll be okay. And a few days later, maybe about a week or so later, I developed a cough that wouldn't go away. I felt rattling in my lungs, particularly my right lung. And the season was changing. It was getting a little cool out. So I thought maybe I had a cold. It'll go away. I remember I used to run 6 to 10 miles a week. And I remember in the middle of my 6-mile run, I was only 2 miles out and I was totally out of breath. And at this time, I had my son in a running stroller, and I thought I was going to pass out. That's how out of breath I was. And now, mind you, I've run 5 marathons before this day. So it's not like marathons were new to me. So that was the first symptom, was just the cough and then the shortness of breath. And I remember going to African dance class, which I used to do twice a week, and just feeling very winded, very out of sorts, a little dizzy. And I said, you know, I'm going to go to the doctor and get checked out. Something's not right. And there, I will never forget, October 1st, 2012 was my first doctor's visit, and it was also my first trail of misdiagnosis I had a trail of just being misdiagnosed left and right for several weeks. And everything from, oh, maybe you have developed asthma to, oh, you have pneumonia, maybe it's just stress. And at this time, my left leg was going very weak. I couldn't barely walk on my left leg. It was just symptoms were just rolling out of nowhere. And I had fever. I felt like I had chills. I had these, I call them twinges in my chest. So it wasn't pain in my chest. It just felt like something was happening in my chest. And I started to develop sharp pain in my rib cage. It was just unbelievable, the amount of symptoms that happened to me. I had sore soles, so the bottom of my feet were very sore. And that's what happens with people with Lyme disease. It might start with 1 or 2 symptoms, and then it snowballs into a multitude of symptoms. And in my case, I went up to about 30-something symptoms in the course of 2 months. And I wasn't, and we'll get to it a little later, but I wasn't officially diagnosed until early December, when I finally met a doctor who says, I think you have Lyme disease. I'm going to do your blood work. And December 15th, I'll never forget that day, the blood work came back highly positive for Lyme disease. But this was after, from October 1 until Thanksgiving week, I went to a multitude of doctors. I saw the emergency room twice. I almost had to get admitted to the hospital. Mind you, I'm a single mother. And it was just a nightmare. I've really thought I was dying. I went from being this marathoner, African dancing, performing spoken word, to someone who I was in the bed for practically almost a month. I had to take a month off of work. I was still on probation, so no pay while I was in the bed. And it was just, one symptom after another. I had sharp pains in my neck. I had throat tightness. I'm referring to my list of symptoms here. Floaters in my eyes. It's actually called, I have vertigo, but not the spinning vertigo, but the disequilibrium where you feel like you're rocking on a boat, but nothing's moving. And after I was diagnosed, about a week or so after my diagnosis, is when the psychiatric symptoms came on, and I basically had an anxiety and panic attack out of nowhere. And I thought maybe this is because I'm just so nervous and beside myself. And then I started having a series of anxiety attacks week after week after week, while having to force myself to go to a job, while taking care of my son, while going to doctors. And my doctor was very concerned about the left side of weakness I had. My right side of my body felt fine. The left side was very weak. So I had an MRI of my brain. And that's where they, I had an MRI of my brain and spine, both with and without contrast dye. And that's when they discovered I had, at that point, 13 lesions in my brain.
Can I I need to hold here because I'm just.
Pause. Okay, that's a lot. I know.
Whoa, just hold on. So a few conversation pieces. Don't know what I'm going to ask this, so I'm just going to put out there. The period of time that you were misdiagnosed, how much did that cost you health-wise?
Financially or health-wise?
Well, in all areas, financially, health-wise, and emotionally.
Yeah. I was, like I said, I was in the emergency room twice. The first time I was in the emergency room, I was misdiagnosed with pleurisy, which is what they thought was causing the pain in my rib cage and the slight chest pain I had. I always had to have an EKG. They wanted to make sure I wasn't having a heart attack. Heart palpitations was one of my symptoms because my heart rate was always significantly increased. It really put me through an emotional roller coaster. I experienced depression. I was still a new mother. And I became a new mom. August 2011 is when I had my son. that year prior to my son being born, a year and a half before he was born, I lost my own mother. And then 2.5 years before my mom died, I lost my sister. So my doctor said I was experiencing so much emotional trauma from the losses, and even just having a child, my body was still physically healing from having my child. And then I get diagnosed with Lyme disease. But health-wise, every misdiagnosis, new symptoms would roll in. So I felt like I was losing time because every doctor was wrong. There was one doctor, and it's funny, the one doctor who was kind of on the right path, two doctors. One was an allergist. She was an allergist, and she said, I think something's going on with your central nervous system. I think you need an MRI. Okay, that was because I was telling her all my symptoms, and she said, I don't think you're allergic to anything. I think something is going on with your CNS. The other doctor was an emergency room doctor who was retiring literally that week. I was one of his last patients. And he says, I think what's going on is greatly impacting your immune system, and something is attacking your body. It's like a foreign agent is in your body, and it is like attacking full force. And you have to be seen by an internist. So I went to an internal doctor an internist, who misdiagnosed me pretty badly. She said, I think you have lupus. I think you have X, Y, and Z. One of my last misdiagnoses before the Lyme diagnosis was a radiologist who said he thought I had multiple sclerosis because of the lesions in my brain. So I went from lupus, pleurisy, pneumonia, asthma, MS, chronic fatigue syndrome, just a whole gambit of, and then when I had depression, oh, you're probably just suffering from postpartum. I said, well, I had my son 13 months ago. I think I would know by now if I'm suffering from postpartum depression. So finally in Thanksgiving, and this was through a referral of a friend who kept seeing my Facebook post. And she said, Serena, I found a doctor on Groupon. I found an integrative health practitioner on Groupon who basically brought me back to life. I think she can help you. Here's her number. And I called that woman on a Tuesday before Thanksgiving. She fit me in at 3 p.m. that day. I sat in her office for 4 hours. 4 hours. And she only charged me for 1 hour. She was supposed to charge by the hour, charge me for 1 hour. I had my first vitamin IV infusion because she said, whatever you have, we have to boost your immune system because we have to fight whatever is in your system. And she says, I will not leave your side until we figure this out and until I can get you at least close to the finish line, if not through it. And she was the one that properly diagnosed me with Lyme disease.
Wow. Before we go any further, I'd like to just shout out Dr. Tachi. For those who don't know, Dr. Tachiata, she does the best media tech and pop culture live stream Wednesdays, 5 p.m. on Instagram Live, and then these are Eastern times Eastern, and 6 o'clock on Wednesday evenings Eastern time on Periscope and Facebook Live. Thank you very much, Dr. Tachi, for stopping by, and welcome back, Marissa. Thanks for listening in. If you are watching on Get Vocal or on Periscope or on YouTube Live, please feel free to make comments and ask questions. Yes, Serena, when that doctor you spent that 4 hours with, other than that doctor finding out what was wrong, how was the treatment of that doctor compared to all the other ones that you were misdiagnosed by?
Okay, so it's 6.5 years later. She's still my doctor.
Wow.
She is more than a doctor. I'm getting a little choked up. She's more than a doctor to me. She is, first of all, she's a mom and a grandmother. So wow, she treats all of her patients, especially, I'm like the age of her daughter. And, I was crying in her arms by the end of the visit, and she walked me to the elevator and she said, you will not die, you will live. And I will be there to see that. And she was more than a doctor. She's a coach. And she was my guide on the side. She gave me her, first of all, her business cards have her cell phone number on them. She's that doctor. So if it's a Sunday afternoon, I'm experiencing heightened symptoms, I would text her. She would say, call me, and I can talk to her. I mean, have her email address. And it's not just me. This is how she treats all of her patients. And that's why she actually left. The hospital system and opened up her own private practice and became an integrative health doctor, because there's more than just popping pills, writing a prescription, and sending people on their way. And she said, we have to integratively treat you holistically, mind, body, spirit. And she was the one that said, you have suffered significant trauma emotionally. And that's probably why the Lyme disease manifested so fast and so quickly in your body, is because your emotional and spiritual levels were so low, and that has a lot to do with your physicality. So she is more than just a doctor. She was the one that helped me create the medical team I have. I have a team of doctors to this day that I see, because like I told you, I had a gambit of symptoms. I still have to see a neurologist annually, because even though I don't have 13 lesions anymore in my brain, thank God, I'm down to about 5 or 6. So they started disappearing.
So just let me ask, so these lesions in your brain, and yes. I'm educated on this, so please educate me and members of the audience. What is a lesion in your brain?
Well, lesion is Lision. So a lesion could be, and everybody's lesions are different. It could look as small as a dime. So let's just say a spot on your brain. It could be as big as an inch or inches. And they look circular. And it's pretty much just it's a spot in your brain where it's almost like damage has been done to that part of your brain. So the Lyme bacteria basically found its way to my spinal cord, my spinal fluid. Because actually, when I had to do a spinal tap, that was one of the tests I also had to do. Lucky me. So I had to do a spinal tap, and they found the bacteria in my spinal fluid. And they said that's how it got up into my brain naturally. And the pattern of the lesions, why that radiologist misdiagnosed me, because the pattern of the lesions is very similar to the pattern of multiple sclerosis. So you can have lesions in your brain and not have MS, but there's a certain pattern that MS has that my lesions also have. But one neurologist said it's not the exact pattern, and he was a great doctor as well. The first neurologist I had said, I don't know how to treat Lyme. I know how to treat Parkinson's, MS, the classic, neurological disorders in the books. I don't know central nervous system Lyme, but I do know a doctor in Georgetown University Hospital that does know Lyme and MS and the difference. And he did a referral. It should have taken 6 months to see this doctor, because that's how long his wait list is. And I got in there in 6 weeks.
Wow.
To this day, he's also more than just a doctor. He is like that uncle. He's an Italian on top of that. So he loves his food and wine. So he's always talking about Italy and things of that nature. But he was a great doctor. He also has students underneath him. And every visit that I had, there were students in the room. He would ask my permission, because he said, I want the next generation of doctors to learn about central nervous system Lyme disease and how to treat it. It's not just popping a pill and going away. So, and to this day, 6+ years later, he is still my neurologist, because I have to see him every year annually. I have to get an MRI of my brain annually every year until the inflammation of my brain and the lesions go away.
Serena, I've got to know you better along the journey, and this
I wouldn't know, but
yeah, like, I know. And Dr. Chachi saying this is incredible, and I emulate the same comment that, as I said, getting to know you better, and you just being so, I don't like the word transparent, so full of heart,
Oh, thank you.
to share this. And Dr. Tachi would like you to speak again. How did you contract this? Like, how did these lesions happen? Like, how did they happen, and how did they happen to you?
Yeah, I know. It's from it's from the tick bite. So I got bit in September, and like my doctor, and I agreed with her. She said, even though I was physically strong, I'm running marathons, I'm African dancing 2-3 times a week, I'm performing spoken word. You couldn't tell me nothing physically, but I was still suffering through grief. I lost my mom and my sister. I was suffering through rejection. To be quite openly, I became a single mom because my son's father didn't want to be with me anymore. I was suffering through a lot of just emotional trauma, and in the midst of that, I get bitten by a tick. So when all of those levels are just like beneath the ground, like below the curb, as I call it, any kind of illness will manifest itself more quickly in your body as it did with mine. And Lyme disease, everybody's different. Some people could get bitten by a tick, no symptoms. Some people get bitten by a tick, they might have a couple of symptoms. Some people get bitten by a tick and they're in the hospital the next week. Some people get bitten by ticks and get Lyme disease and they die. I mean, you can die from this disease. So it happened to me. And like I said, I got bitten in September, and those few months, these symptoms just rolled. They just rolled like I tell people it's like a snowball from the top of a mountain. It just turned into this huge snowball at the end of it all. And it just kept rolling until I met my doctor in DC. And my treatment was different. We tried medications. We tried the typical medicines, and my body said no to each one.
Wow. So what did you have? What approach had to be taken?
Well, the first thing we tried was there's one medication we tried through the IV because of the fact that I have central nervous system Lyme. The best way to get the medicine into my system is through an IV. So I tried IV Rocephin. Rocephin is also used for other illnesses as well. And it floored me. Like I couldn't even function. I mean, I was barely functioning as it was with Lyme disease, but this right here just put me out. And I would shake, I would have tremors, all kinds of stuff. So we tried different medications through pills, through IVs. Finally, around mid-February, now we're in 2013, my doctor said we're going to do a lot of detoxification. That's also a good part about knowing about Lyme disease, is that anybody should know about detoxification. I mean, not anybody should know, but I learned a lot about detoxifying my body and purging it through infrared saunas, through aqua chi foot therapy, and purging the toxins out of me so I can now do a new treatment. Because the more you're killing off the bacteria, if you don't get it out your system, it's just going to recycle itself and your body. So I had to go the integrative health route. I think I told you back, I had to start a vitamin IV infusion the week of Thanksgiving. So we continued with those, but then we switched the medicine out for a peroxide IV. So I was getting 2 IVs a week. And I did that for 2 IVs every week for about 8 months straight. And then it went to 1 a week. And then it went to it went to 1 a week and then every other week. So altogether, I had 14 months of IV treatments. And it was through peroxide treatments, the food grade peroxide, not the peroxide you buy in CVS or Walgreens, and also vitamin IV infusion as well. Lots and lots of blood work was done. I would go to get lab work, and I still get annual lab work done, and I usually get about 20 vials of blood withdrawn from me when I go annually. I go to a specialty lab once a year where they measure your amino acid levels. And this is just good across the board for anybody to know their amino acid levels, their mineral levels, their vitamin levels, because that's what a lot of these typical labs don't capture. And that you want to know those levels, because Lyme disease, the bacteria depletes your minerals. So like my magnesium level was in the red zone. I'm supposed to be in the green or at least the yellow. I was depleted of magnesium. My vitamin Bs were depleted. My CoQ10 level was low. I mean, it was a lot of red, not enough of green and yellow. And having the function, I remember getting my IV treatments. I get one during the week. I would take a half day at work and get my IV, and I would go on a Saturday and bring my son with me, which is probably why he's not scared of needles to this day. He would come with me every Saturday and watch his mama get an IV every week.
So when, with all the treatments and when the treatments that were working started to have a positive effect, what changes did you notice in your life?
Well, I kept a journal. I actually have a couple of journals, and I would journal the symptoms I had. So I remember there was 1 month I had about 18 symptoms. I remember I wrote down how many symptoms I experienced that day, and there were about 18 I experienced that day. So I would wait about a month. And I would track how many symptoms I had experienced that day for the week. I had noticed I had dropped down to about 16. I'm like, oh, okay. And I noticed which ones dropped off. So I kept a very detailed log of my symptoms. So I had the IV treatments, as I was saying, but I also had a neurologist who knows Lyme very well. And he decided to blend in a medication. So that's the great thing about my medical team. They talk to each other. And that is so key for doctors nowadays. Some doctors work very siloed, talk to each other. And the neurologist told my integrative health doctor that there's a medication he used for his MS patients that he also used for some of his Lyme patients. And he said that it gets a bad rap because people who are coming off of opiates use this medication, but they use the high dose. It's called naltrexone. And they use like 50 plus milligrams a day to help them with, opiate use and to get off of opiates. So we use what's called low dose naltrexone. And that was I use 4.5 milligrams a day to this day. Very, very low. And literally within the first 2 months of me being on that medication, four symptoms completely fell off and never came back. So I said, okay, between this, my doctor, and now I also had an herbalist on my team. So I had some herbs in here as well. And I also have a chiropractor and he also does acupressure. I have an acupuncturist, a Reiki master on my team as well. So between all of them, my symptoms were starting to become lower. Also, a very important thing I think I was telling you was my emotional state. So I had to let go of some people. Some people let me go. How about that? I was sick with Lyme disease and some people cut me off.
Wow.
Because as one person said, my illness was too much for her. Oh. So she let me go, and that hurt because this was a friend I had for many years. And but in a way, I'm like, okay, God, thank you for the pruning, thank you for the purging, because what he left me was friends and family that really just rallied around me and helped me get back to well. My church home was another integral part because I suffered from the anxiety attacks. I couldn't even go to church. I couldn't sit in a room with more than 10 people without having an anxiety attack. So I would stream church every week. I would send them prayer requests via email. I would talk to counselors. I had a therapist during all this. I had a counselor. And so it was a lot. It wasn't just a physical piece, but I started seeing the symptoms roll back bit by bit. And like I said, January 2014 was my last IV treatment. I think that was the best birthday present I received because that was my birthday week. And my doctor said, let's just see how you do a few weeks without, because what was happening was I plateaued and I still had like a few symptoms and they just weren't really budging. But she said, I just want to see if any symptoms come back. And then if they do, we'll start the IVs again. But if they don't, we'll just start another regimen. I was on a bunch of vitamins. I'm still on a bunch of vitamins and supplements. But yeah, I haven't had an IV treatment since January 2014, which is a blessing. My stress load is it's very minimal. I do not allow toxic people in my life. Certain people I have to interact with because I just have to, and I just know how to interact with them is via text and not talking to them on the phone. But there's just certain things I had to do so I can get well. I had to stay on this planet because there were a couple of times I almost checked out of here. I mean, really, like, telling friends, if something happens to me, telling Jordan's godmother where the paperwork was. And it was really to that point, it was really bad.
Well, I just want to catch up on the conversation here a little while back. Luke says he worries about ticks because we've got a lot of deer ticks in the grass around here. Marissa's saying, yes, the levels are important. Yeah, Luke is, my man Luke. Yes, Luke, I got confused. Luke, now I know, Luke, you're chatting. So Marissa's saying you were so fortunate with an integrated team. She says, love my acupuncture. Dr. Taj has a question, but before we get to that question, speaking about the team, did they know each other? How did you get this team of medical professions together? Like, did they know each other? Did you spark that on? How did that happen?
What happened was my doctor, just call her Dr. M. So Dr. M in DC personally knew the neurologist, and she also knew the other doctor I didn't mention. So people go to ophthalmologists and optometrists to get their eyes checked. Well, because I had floaters and because I have lesions, I have a neuro-ophthalmologist. So he goes beyond your eyes to see what's going on with the brain signals and everything of that nature in regards to your eyes and the floaters I have, because that's another symptom I still have. I have like sometimes flashing lights that happen in my eyes and floaters, not as much. But she kicked off the team. As I said, there was one neurologist who referred me to the other neurologist. So that neurologist, him and Dr. M, they talk by phone. I think they've talked more by email because it's hard to get doctors on the phone, so they share paperwork with each other. If I give lab work to my chiropractor who knows how to read lab work, if he has questions, he'll call my doctor. So it just organically and divinely happened.
Nice.
The neuro-ophthalmologist knew the first neurologist, but my neuro-ophthalmologist knows Dr. M very well. He says we used to work together when we were all in the hospital system together, and I've seen quite a few of her patients. So a couple of them knew each other from the jump, but a few of them didn't, and now they know each other.
Wonderful. Okay, so now to Dr. Tachi's question. She's asking, do they know if cannabis is an effective treatment?
So, okay, so remember I was saying I suffered from the anxiety attacks, the psychiatric symptoms as they call it. So here is where the DMV is tricky. DMV is DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So I live in Northern Virginia. I'm on the outskirts of DC. My doctor's in DC. So DC legalized cannabis. So you can prescribe it, you can smoke it, you're fine. I live in Virginia. So I cross that bridge with some cannabis, okay. I'm in trouble.
Okay.
So what happens now is there's a thing called CBD oil. So it's a cannabis oil, and it's made out of a hemp oil. So it doesn't give off the high. And you can get it from a apothecary, which is where I get my medication customly compounded, because my medication I can't get from CVS. Every month my medication has to be freshly made for me and sent to me in the mail.
Goodness.
So it's through an apothecary out of Florida. They actually have one here in Maryland. So there's one down by you, Tachi. Yep, there is. But it's called CBD oil, and I do use drops. It helped out tremendously with the anxiety. It helps out with pain. They have creams. that you could rub the cream on your joints. It helps out with aches. But straight up cannabis, depending on where you live, either a Lyme literate doctor or your doctor will prescribe that for Lyme. And I've heard it's worked wonders with Lyme disease patients. But if you're like me, living in Virginia, can't have it yet. So you can, it'll just be illegal, but you know.
Okay.
But yeah, but that has been, and my doctor feels so bad for me because she's like, if you lived in DC, you know, things might be a little better for you, but it's okay. We found other alternatives.
So with the Lyme disease, how much is it still shaking your day-to-day living, if at all?
I still, I mean, I'm thankful when people say, "Oh my gosh, you still have several symptoms left." I'm like, I used to have 35. Okay, so that's a fraction of what I have, and they're not daily, which is nice. There is a couple, one in particular, and I'm actually shifting gears. I'm going to see a new specialist because sometimes you have your medical team and they might be at a stopping point, you know, and they might say, maybe it's time to see another specialist that can get you all the way through the finish lines because my symptoms are not in full remission. That's what we say. So I still have a few. One is disequilibrium. So I still can't African dance. I still can't go running. I can power walk, which is a huge step forward. I'm able to walk a 5K. I can do that. At one point, I couldn't even walk down the hallway without catching dizzy spells.
Oh my
goodness. And it's funny because when I was driving, I felt fine because I'm in motion. When the car stops, my head still feels like I'm in motion. So it's almost the best way one of my doctors described it is your brain and your ears, they're not talking to each other. The signals are off. So let's say you go from, I used to suffer from spatial awareness pretty badly. So let's say I was in the kitchen and suddenly I leave my house and I'm in the parking lot. Well, my brain still thinks I'm in the kitchen. So that's why I would go into a panic and I would get dizzy because my body's thinking I'm still in this small space when in actuality, I'm in a big parking lot. So I would have to walk close to walls. I would scale walls. I would scale the parking lot. I would walk close to cars. Luckily, I had a toddler at that time, so I would use his stroller a lot. I had a cane at one point to help me walk straight just so I wouldn't fall. So I still have that symptom. It's not severe anymore, but my ears are still off. Haven't flown on a plane in years. We have to actually test drive my ears to make sure I can fly on a plane, just 45 minutes even. So that's one of my symptoms. I still suffer from shortness of breath. It's not severe like it used to be. I don't feel like I'm about to pass out because I'm out of breath. I still have twitches sometimes. I have eye twitches sometimes. They're very slight, but I can feel them. I have muscle spasms at times. Sometimes they hurt, sometimes they don't. I do suffer from anxiety sometimes. It's not severe. And I've been forcing myself to do things like open mics and things of that nature, trying to get over that. And, just physical things. Like I said, I still have a few lesions in my brain. I know about it. If you can't look at my brain, so the average person would not know unless I tell them. And so those are the main ones. I still have heart palpitations, but not frequent, only during a certain time of the month. But yeah, during that lovely time of the month, that's when my symptoms flare. Okay. But yeah, I still have a few. They come and go, but the inner ear disturbance is the worst. It's the one that stays with me every day.
Okay. Welcome, Tony. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. Can you hear me?
Tony.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Sometimes my computer in Get Vocal doesn't like to play well with my microphone sometimes. Yeah. But I have two quick questions about Lyme disease, most of the complications that are involved in it. At any point, has the Lyme disease affected your blood sugars or your thyroid?
That's great questions. My thyroid was thrown off a little bit. My blood sugar, yes. That's a great question, Tony. My blood sugar was in the pre-diabetic range.
Mm.
Now, mind you, I was a marathon runner, strict diet, and I'm like, why suddenly am I almost over 6.0? And it was increasing. And that's when we went to the specialty lab and got a whole bunch of blood work done, and noticed that minerals were off, amino acids were off, vitamins were off. But yeah, it did trigger my blood sugar level, and that's why I'm on my diet, which I haven't talked about. I'm on a no to very low sugar diet. If I do have sugar, it has to be very, very, very low. We're talking single digits, maybe 16 grams.
Oh yeah.
And actually, I know when it is high without even looking at the back of a label because it impacts my ears. High sodium and high sugar impacts my ears. I get dizzy. And my heart races a little bit if I have too much sugar. But now my blood sugar is back down to normal range. But that took time after quite a few treatments. But yeah, it did impact my blood sugar. And some people do have thyroid dysfunction with Lyme disease as well.
Okay. I was just kind of wondering. I deal with those two issues. I don't have Lyme disease, but I was just kind of wondering how it affects those two issues. And the only times I've really dealt with Lyme disease is on a secondhand case. My nephew got it. He was out walking around in the woods. Well, actually, he wasn't walking. He was out doing a Boy Scout project, and 3 days later, he started getting sick and flu-like symptoms and just hot, cold, flashes, all kinds of stuff. And then all of a sudden, his daddy mentioned, "Why do you have this bullet on your on your leg?" So yeah, so that was caught very quickly, and they took him to the doctor and they put him on antibiotics, and it got rid of it within 2.5 weeks, I think. And the same thing happened to my youngest nephew. Same thing, and he got a bullet right on his arm, and they took him on high-powered antibiotics, and it got rid of it and very quickly.
Yeah, if they catch it like very quickly, you can get on antibiotics and it can go away pretty fast. If you're like me, hanging around for about 3 months without a proper diagnosis, and I'm fortunate. I have met people that were misdiagnosed for a decade. I met one woman misdiagnosed with multiple sclerosis for 10 years and didn't have MS. She had Lyme disease. 10 years.
Wow.
And once they put her on antibiotics and she went the integrative health route like I did, IV, she got better within 6 months. But she said 10 years of her life were gone. She was on a walker. She had to be on disability, you name it. And she didn't even have MS. And the reason how they caught it is that she one time went to get her brain MRI done and all the lesions were gone. So if you had multiple sclerosis, you'd have lesions on your brain and you would have inflammation of your brain, and all of it was not there anymore. And that's when her doctor said, let's get you tested for Lyme disease. And 1, 2, 3, she was highly positive.
Wow.
After 10 years. Yeah. There's a lot of cases like that. There's a lot of thousands of people walking around now who don't know they have it.
Tony, any other questions for Serena?
So no, that's it. I appreciate it. I appreciate the
Thank
time,
you for
and
sharing, Tony.
and you're welcome. And you feel better, Serena.
Thank
and
you.
Dr. Bob, I'll see you later.
Yeah.
Thanks again,
Yeah.
Tony. Thanks for your comments and your questions. Much
He brings up
appreciated.
a good point. Kids with Lyme disease, that's even more disheartening. I know a lot of adults who realize they probably have had Lyme since they were children, because they're out playing in the grass, the woods, rolling around, doing God knows what. You're not thinking ticks, and getting bitten. You just wanting to have fun and being a child. And all these years, I know one. She wrote a book, Tommy Hilfiger's daughter. she wrote a book called Bite Back, and they realized that she's probably had Lyme since she was a child.
Oh my.
And they were blaming all her psychiatric symptoms, her anxiety disorder, her meltdowns, because she's high profile and, you know, her stressful life. And then she met someone who said, I think you need a Lyme, you know, test. I think you have Lyme disease. And sure enough, she was highly positive for Lyme disease. And, you know, thank goodness for her. And there's other celebrities out there. Daryl Hall of Hall & Oates is another one who talks vibrantly about Lyme. He almost died from Lyme disease. So, but a lot of them are thinking that they got it when they were children. And that's why they now do, you know, we tell people to do tick tests. So when your child comes in, even yourself, you look on your socks, you look on your skin, you know, see if you have anything on you, you take it off with a tweezer. Some say with a lighter, but you know, burning your skin off. But you know, they tell your children, especially, you know, when they come in from play, to do a tick test every day, especially if they're in the grass, the woods, or out there camping. I refuse to go in the woods. If Jordan ever is in the Boy Scouts, we're not camping. Sorry. So, you know, unless you're putting me in a hotel down the street with my son, we're not going in the woods. But yeah, a lot of children get Lyme disease too, and it's really painful to see them go through that.
Speaking of your wonderful son, Jordan, I have to ask this because it's on my heart. How has you having Lyme disease affected your relationship with your son?
You know, we are so close. We're two peas in a pod. It's amazing. I tell parents, you know, don't, you know, negate, oh, my child, he can't remember, she can't remember from when. Because, you know, we go to doctor's visits, like I said, and the doctor's like, oh, wow, you're not scared of needles? And he says, well, it sounds kind of bad coming from a child. Well, no, because my mom has had a lot of needles. So it's
Oh my.
I'm like, okay, I have to clean that one up. No, I'm not a drug user. Okay, so, but, you know, I thank God that he was the worst stage of Lyme. He was too young to remember.
Okay.
I had friends that would come in, swoop in. I mean, would just take him for the day, watch him while I'm in the bed in the bedroom. He's in the living room, and they're watching him. You know, friends would just take him for an hour or 2 hours, sometimes overnight. So I really had a close community once I found out who that close community was of friends. But I will say, you know, when I'm getting my blood work done, I keep my doctor's appointments very separate because now it's not as frequent. So I can go during my work hours. But he does know, you know, about, you know, his mom was very sick. He will actually tell his friends, my mom used to be very, very sick, and she has to be very, very careful. And I don't like when people make her upset because I never can make her sick. So he's put two together. He's put that if I get too stressed, my symptoms will flare, and they do when I get too stressed. But I do tick tests on him. I've taught him about ticks. He's now teaching his friends about bug bites and stuff like that. But let's just say we are very close. And like I said, I'm a single mom, and he knows at the end of the day who's going to be there for him. You know, I was there through, you know, just feeding him while I'm laying down in the bed, and he's like sitting next to me, and I'm feeding my child, you know. And there would be many nights where I couldn't sleep, you know, in the beginning stages of Lyme, and I would just lie awake, just watching him, you know, because I didn't know if I would close my eyes if I was going to wake up. So we are very, very, very close. As someone says it, my pastor at church, he's a sweet potato on my sweet potato pie. So he is, you know, I think it has taught him, even at a young age, he has so much empathy and sympathy as a child. It's unbelievable. And I think it's because of what he has seen me, even his, you know, the past couple of years, just what I've gone through. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
Dr. Tatch has a question. We'll get to it in just a second, but I want to say a big shout out to Candy. So Candy from Japan saying hello to everybody. So good to see you, Candy. Thanks for stopping by, taking time out of your positive, productive schedule where it's in the morning in Japan. So thank you so much for stopping by. Dr. Tatch has a question. How many people of color have Lyme disease?
You know, they haven't broken it down by color because Lyme disease does not discriminate. Ticks don't care what color you are. They just land on you. So I actually tried to look up that statistic, and it's hard because there's so many people walking around who don't know they have Lyme. So then we have the ones who are called false. You know, you have the false positives, and we also have in Lyme disease false negatives. So you can have your blood test done and it comes out negative for Lyme, but you actually have Lyme disease because Lyme can hide in your muscles, it can hide in your tissues, it can hide in your brain. It doesn't have to necessarily be in your bloodstream. So there's a lot of people walking around that don't know they have Lyme. I know in the United States alone, just a general number for you, Tachi, about 300,000 per year are diagnosed with Lyme disease. That's just in the United States. Now, globally, because this is not just an American thing, there is Lyme disease that has been in Europe, Asia as well. And I'm not sure about South America, but I know more of the Northern Hemisphere has Lyme disease. But yeah, about 300,000 per year. I know in Europe, they're about at 65,000 plus a year of diagnosed Lyme disease cases. And these are the ones who are actually diagnosed. So then you have the doctors who don't believe you, and the doctors who are like, oh, well, the blood test shows X, Y, and Z, so you don't have this. Or the blood test shows that you don't have the co-infections, which is a whole other conversation in itself. So you don't have the co-infections. So, yeah, there's a lot of people out there with Lyme.
Yeah, Dr. Chachi says that's a lot of people, and she says true. But I think that we often think that it is a disease that we don't think of having as having as a melanated race. So I think that's why she brought up that conversation about it's race. Right. Okay. Yeah. So we're going to start winding down here. But so what are some things you've been through this? You're continuing to go through this. What advice, some best practices would you have for our audience out there in regards to Lyme disease?
Well, with Lyme disease, like I said, I was misdiagnosed several times, and my gut intuition kept telling me to keep going until you get to the right doctor to find the right diagnosis. So I tell people, don't settle when it comes to Lyme disease or anything when it comes to your health. Because a doctor would have treated me, in a heartbeat for some other disease that I don't even have. So that's one thing. The other thing is that the Lyme disease, and we didn't even get a chance to talk about this, comes with a host of co-infections. So you have the Lyme disease, and there's about 14 co-infections you can get from Lyme disease. And the symptoms I have left, one specialist who I spoke with, she thinks, even though I'm testing negative for it, if you read the books, is testing for Babesia, which is a co-infection of Lyme. So that has the shortness of breath, anxiety, twitches, all the last several symptoms, the inner ear disturbance. And I haven't been fully treated for that co-infection yet. So I tell people, even if one doctor doesn't think you have a co-infection, you just go with your gut and you keep going until you get the answers you need so you can be well. And do your research, do your own research. Be careful of Google. Don't Google everything. You want to make sure you're Googling, reputable websites and sources like the Lyme Disease Association, like the Lyme literate doctors who have high ratings. A lot of them are in Long Island. You actually have a couple in Canada. Quite a few Lyme disease patients have crossed the border to get top-notch care, integrative health care from Canada. And California and the West Coast, by far, they're light years ahead of Lyme disease treatment. So I tell people, if you have to virtually travel, if you can physically travel, it's great. If you can get a doctor virtually who will read your blood work and do things via Skype, who will help treat you, that's great. And I mean, with Lyme disease and anything else, like I said, it's mind, body, and spirit. I was out of whack, mind and spirit wise, and emotionally in turmoil. I had to let go of things. I had to let go of people. I had to let go of stress. I was very thankful. The job I had, and I didn't even get a chance to talk about this, that place gave me the blues when I had Lyme disease and was adding
talk about that.
Adding to my stress load. Okay, so I'm at a job, will not say their name, but in Washington, D.C., that did not have a formal accommodations policy. Oh, wow. They were founded in the early 1970s. And when it came down to accommodating me, because my doctor made me fill out an FMLA application, so Family Medical Leave Act. She said, I don't trust those people at your job. We're going to protect your job by filling out this form, and you need accommodations. She was like, you need help walking across this gigantic building. So the building I worked in, each way is 4 city blocks each way. Wow. 4 Washington, D.C. blocks. So, you know, I had to used to walk across the building to drop off purchase orders and paper because they were so antiquated. Things were not done electronically. It was a large space. We had a lot of our meetings in concert halls because that's how many staff we had. I couldn't sit in those meetings. I would have an all-out anxiety attack. So she wrote out accommodations for me. And when Human Resources was basically harassing me and you know, interrogating me, my doctor called them and put in one simple phone call and said, I have a lawyer on deck. I am not afraid to call her and sue you because you're not accommodating my patient and you're making her do things that can medically harm her. They backed off. And I was actually one of the first accommodations, people underneath accommodations policy for this institution that was 40-something years old. So I was one of the first ones that got formal accommodations through the accommodations policy because we got a new HR director and they had to get things in check. But I had people I was working for and they weren't good for my blood. They weren't good for my life. They weren't good for my spirit. And I was thankful when I got well enough to the point where I was no longer on FMLA, so I didn't have to fill out family medical leave. But that also gave them the luxury to let me go. So when they let me go, I skipped out of that place with my bags and I was like, you know, it's time to go anyway. I was there for 5 years. And I will tell you, literally, the week I got let go, one of my symptoms, which was fatigue, dropped off and never came back. That was over 2 years ago. So that symptom was hanging on because I was just stressed and I was working myself to death for a job that didn't care about me or my child. So when they let me go, I said, what's my severance pay? And I'll be out your hair. I'll be out your way. So I tell people sometimes you have to, it's hard to let the, you know, job go because that's your medical insurance as well. But I was at a place physically where I was able to, you know, be let go and I got Medicaid and I was able to get my lab work done and I had other jobs since then. But yeah, you know, it was one of the best things that happened to me in my health was that job letting me go.
Wow. Well, this has been another epic conversation, big time, and no surprise with Serena on the line. Any final words you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I just want to thank everyone for taking out their time tonight. I just scratched the surface of Lyme disease. If you have Lyme, if you think you have Lyme, a loved one has Lyme, there are lots of support groups. I was a part of a support group online called The Healing Well. And the Healing Well has support groups for a multitude of chronic illnesses. But they have a Lyme disease support group. They're virtual. So I was talking to folks overseas Friends I have to this day. Years later, we're still friends. I could say some of them are in remission, full remission. They've never had a symptom of Lyme disease in the past 2-3 years. You can get your life back after Lyme, even having Lyme. The one thing I didn't mention is it's very hard to tell if you are free of Lyme disease.
You know what? I'm gonna interrupt you there. I have a feeling we should do a part 2. What do you think?
Yeah, because I didn't even talk about co-infections.
Okay.
Talk about
hold off. Don't hold off. We're gonna do a part 2. We're gonna do a part 2. That's the
okay.
I know there's things you didn't want to cover. As long as you make sure you make a note of them, and that we can do a part 2.
Okay. They're all written. But
good.
Yeah,
because I want to hold off there because I like it's a nice teaser.
Yeah, I didn't get into my diet. People always ask, like, how do you eat? You have your diet so restricted. I'm like, I eat well.
Good.
But I tell people, my short sentence I tell people is that there's life after Lyme. And
wow, look at this. John is here saying, thank you. My father almost died from a serious co-infection.
Yeah, it can really, I have a friend who flatlined twice on Lyme disease. She flatlined. And it's a disease that's not taken serious enough. And I'm glad your father's around. I'm glad you survived this wicked disease. And I would love to talk to him one day. We could probably, we probably have a lot in common. That's for sure. A lot in common.
Yeah, I could imagine. That's, if, John, if you want to, I don't know if you want to share your information with Serena. I don't know. Well, you know what? What's the best email address for people to contact you at?
Sure. It's my name, Serena Wills, SerenaWills @yahoo.com. And I have a couple of websites, as Dr. Vibe described. So I am a published author of 2 books. So one was mentioned, Reconstruction, Pieces of Life, Volume 1. The other one is Crying Tears of Teal, which is about ovarian cancer. My mom passed away of ovarian cancer, so I poetically documented our journey together. And that is serenawills.com. And my other website, which I'm so happy and proud to talk about, is I am a National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach through the National Board in Health and Wellness Coaching, which is an organization here in the United States. And my health and wellness coaching practice website is divinewryte.com. So DIVINEWRYTE.com. So I use all that I went through with Lyme disease and what my mom went through, went back to school, got my Master of Arts in Health and Wellness Coaching, and turned this thing around so I can help other people. And that's my practice, is to help other people get well.
That is impressive. Fantastic. I'd like to welcome Ms. Gisela from the Get Vocal platform. Welcome for dropping by. This is phenomenal. And I agree with you. I've heard about Lyme disease in passing, but I think it's something that we need to pay more attention with. Yeah. And I do doctor's appointments every 3 months. So I have one coming up. So I'm going to speak to my doctor and ask him, is there any symptoms that I'm carrying pertaining to Lyme disease?
You can ask for the test. You could say, I would like to get, the Lyme titers tested. I want to get the Western blot. I want the whole 9 yards. Insurance will cover it. That's the one thing they will cover. And I want to see my Lyme bands and see where they're at. And go from there, and sometimes these regular labs won't pick up. That's why you go to specialty labs too. That's in the next conversation. It's about specialty labs, because people are like, what are specialty labs? Yep, there are specialty labs, and they're great.
You're kidding? There are specialty labs?
Yeah, there's one called IGeneX. They specialize in Lyme disease. They There are so many strains of Lyme. There's so many strains of the co-infections. The regular labs only test you for 1 or 2. They might not test you for 20 that's out there of Babesia, for example. And these tests, now, unfortunately, sometimes insurance won't cover it all, but I'd rather pay. And sometimes insurance will cover a portion, but like I said, that's another conversation in itself. Yeah.
Hey, there's a lot coming up on part 2.
Yeah, and just regular folks can go like to Genova is another one, diagnostics. You could get your amino acid levels checked, your minerals, your vitamin levels, and they are so on point to the T. They give you written like documentation as to where your levels are, why they don't just give you numbers. They give you, text that you can understand so you don't get caught up in medical jargon.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So we can talk all about that in part 2.
Yeah,
do a part.
The way it's going, this may be a part 2, part 3.
Yeah, I know yoga therapists that specialize with Lyme disease patients because we also suffer from joint aches and pain, which I still do have some joint aches, but some are just their joint aches are so bad they're in wheelchairs. It's really, sometimes it's one of the first symptoms are the joint aches. Mine came later.
Wow.
But yeah, arthritic pain beyond belief. So that was another misdiagnosis, was rheumatoid arthritis. Like, no, I don't have it.
Yes. Okay. Like this is phenomenal. Well, you know what? We're gonna stop it there, folks.
Okay.
Stop it there. We're definitely gonna stop it there. I'd like to say, as always, I'd like to thank Serena for making time in her positive, productive schedule to share with us. It is always appreciated and not taken for granted. And I also like to say a big shout out to the boss of the house. He's been behaving. I haven't seen him peeking in the back.
Now I gave him toys, and he has the tablet now. So
he's good. He's good. Yeah,
he's good. Yeah. He's fed. He did his homework. We did a lot before 7 o'clock. I'm telling you.
There we go. All right. Well, smart mother. She knows her stuff. All right. Well, it is Dr. Vibe here. I'm the host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations. Thank you to Dr. Tachi, Brad, Luke, my fellow Canuck, Tony, Candy from Japan, John. Thank you for being a first-timer. Welcome to Bobby on the tail end. Bobby, hope you and your son are doing well, are fine as always. Early on, we had Lokesh, we had Kinte, we had Shannon, we had Marissa dropping by. On the Periscope end, we had, what I forgot. Let me just make sure I remember. You for Sight joined. Also, Nappy Locks.
Hey.
And also Alex and Gisela from Get Vocal. Also, Lokesh is from Get Vocal also, so I can't forget them also. And on I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. Most importantly, thanks everyone for taking the time. I am Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, as always. End off my conversations by saying, live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Next up, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions, and then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to hang out. And actually, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to just put it in the link real quick. And I should have done it earlier, but I hadn't done it for a while. So I'm going to ask people, if you are up to it, I'd love to just send out a little survey to you about how you enjoyed tonight's conversation. So
positive ratings,
please. And no problem. So we're going to end it off there. I'm going to stay in the room for a little bit so you'll have access to click on the link. All right. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith and walk good.